Gordon Bombay with a kind of off-kiltered question, saying he was watching the Ducks live coverage of the Ducks fashion show, and he asked whose wife/girlfriend is the hottest, and apparently both of us have the answer. Matt Engel coming in with Ryan Miller's wife is fire in the chat right after that question. So
I don't think I've ever seen his wife. I know that she's an actress.
Yeah.
The only one I've ever seen is Getzlaf's wife. Oh no, I've seen Perry's wife too. But I mean, that's it. I guess you'd have to have a lineup to make a decision on that. That's not something I really pay attention to.
This is like a conversation down the road, because I feel like I'm in the same boat as you. I think I've only really seen Getzlaf's wife. I haven't. I mean, I don't.
Wasn't she involved in like Real Housewives thing from in Canada? They had a show.
Yeah, there's like a hockey wives thing, and I think that's where I'd seen her. But other than that, I mean, that show was the worst too. I'm not.
All those shows like that are terrible, man.
Brendan Preston and his girlfriend were on that show, and it was just a nightmare to watch. I mean, you had guys too, like David Booth was on that show, Jonathan Blum was on that show, and then it just took a dark turn when these guys just stopped getting calls from NHL teams. Like Jonathan Blum was playing in like the KHL. And David Booth was playing overseas, and you're like, Brandon Press. You basically saw the whole like backstory of how Brandon Press wasn't getting contract offers, and he was just like, he just hated life at that point. It was such a weird show.
Anytime you throw that kind of mess together, it's not going to be a good ending.
Yeah, but to answer the question, I feel like that's one we have to get to down the road. I mean, we need a lineup. Gordon Bombay, if you want to throw up a lineup. Get something together and we can answer it down the road, because I don't have much to draw on right now. I haven't seen enough to fully answer that question.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to athletes' wives, honestly, so that's interesting.
Chase coming in the chat saying, I feel like the Ducks signed Ritchie to a 1-year deal, and if he doesn't pick up his game, they just let him go. I don't know how you feel about that. Do you think they let him go? If he, I mean, that's a hot take a bit. If he doesn't pick up his game, they just let him go, and they give up. They don't even re-sign him, don't even trade him. I guess would trade his rights, but that's interesting for sure.
That is definitely not Bob Murray-esque. Murray's going to try to make something of anything he can get for him if he puts him on the trade block for sure. Ritchie's an interesting one. He's a young guy still. I believe he's only 22. So he's still young, and he's got time to grow and get his legs under him, I guess. But I feel like at this point, you almost know what you're getting from him at an NHL level. He's played long enough, but I don't know. That's a tough contract to gauge, just because he went on a stretch here where he was scoring, and we thought, okay, cool, he's finally found his home there on the Henrique and Kasha line. Let's get things going here. I don't know. They would never let him go, though. I mean, you can't concede a first-round pick for nothing. It's just not going to happen. But the contract on years, I'm going to leave that part of the question to you. How do you feel about his contract at this point?
I mean, we've kind of answered this a bit at different times when we've had similar questions about what is the Ducks offseason look in regards to their RFAs, and I think we had said probably around a 2-year, 3-year deal, maybe around $2.5-3 million, something like that. I think even that's might be a little bit too much, because that's kind of around what Cogliano's making. I feel like Cogliano has more of an impact on this lineup than Nick Ritchie has had. So it's an interesting point, because he's still a young guy. So it's I think if you had to look at the contracts that are coming up this year, I think that's the hardest one to predict, because there's a lot of ways they could go with that. I don't think they lock him down long term, and that wouldn't be a smart move really from Nick Ritchie, because I'm sure he feels he has more to give than what he's given right now, and to put himself in a 5-year deal at kind of a low cost isn't the best for him. But then you got to think of it the other way, is maybe he's a little bit worried, and he wants that kind of stability and that certainty that he's going to get paid for the next 5 years in case things don't tick upward. And you look at some former Ducks players who weren't as high draft picks but were first round picks. Emerson Edom, I mean, he doesn't play. I believe he doesn't play in the National Hockey League anymore. And he was a guy that the Ducks didn't lock down to a long-term deal and was kind of on the fringe, just like Nick Ritchie is right now, and didn't have that contract certainty. So there's a couple angles that Nick Ritchie could go with in this offseason.
He's got 9 goals in 24 playoff games. In 4 goals last season. I looked at it, I was combining there with San Diego. That's my bad. I looked at his stat line like an idiot. I was like, I don't think he had 9. There's no way. So he had 4 goals last postseason. He has 8 goals this season, 17 assists, 25 total points. He's a 20 to 30 point guy. You're not going to overpay for that. He's 22. He just turned 22 in December, so he's still pretty young. He's going to start next season at the same age, obviously. They're definitely not going to trade him, I would say, unless they get a nice deal out of it. They like that style of player. He drops the gloves. He's a big hitter. He rides the line of what's legal and illegal in the game. Definitely. And Bob Murray and Randy Carlyle like that type of play. So I don't see him going anywhere anytime really soon, but I don't see anything longer than a 3-year deal. I agree with you. And I think Cogliano provides so much more on the defensive side of the puck than Nick Ritchie does.
There's just so many guys coming up, young forwards in this system that I feel like are going to make him expendable. I mean, Max Jones is a very similar type of player to him, but he actually has the wheels. And I feel like that's a direct comparison where you can just slot Max Jones in whenever he ends up coming up and being ready. And he'll fill right in that role. And he's the type of player, like you said, that the coach and the GM both like, but he provides a little bit more than Nick Ritchie does. And then you've got Troy Terry, who we've already talked about, Sam Steele, Maxime Comtois. You've got 4 guys coming up who are, in my opinion, going to make Nick Ritchie expendable at some point if he doesn't improve his play. And I feel like eventually the Ducks just move on and either trade him outright or package him in another deal. I just feel like, a lot of fans have gotten to the point where they're at wit's end and they just don't believe you're going to get much more out of him. And at some point, Bob Murray's going to feel exactly the same way. I feel like, he's definitely, if anybody, out of anybody, he's probably the most disappointed about how Nick Ritchie's turned out. Because you look at some of the other guys they could have got with that 10th overall pick. And now you're sitting at a guy who's a 20, 30 point guy. You expect a lot more from such a high pick. And I think, if anything, he's getting to that point now, too, where he's like, we're going to have to move on eventually if some of these other young guys can come up and play in the next couple seasons.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, that's what they're going to have to figure out here in the offseason, how long they're going to want to give him a chance for.
Exactly. Moving on in the chat, Derek asked, or he kind of stated then asked, so he said career high in goals for Manson. He almost doubled the amount of points from last year, so he had 17 last year, and now he's at 32 this year. So with that being said, how do you guys think his development is going?
Great. He just got that new deal kicking in next season. He solidified himself as a great defenseman. It's no secret that he's not a slouch without Hampus Lindholm. They're both really good defensemen. They both complement each other very well. So I'm very happy with his development there. And you got to give all the credit there to Dallas Eakins and the coaching staff with the Gulls coming up in bringing those guys up through the system here in Anaheim. And then obviously the Ducks just know how to handle those guys.
Yeah, and we had talked about this with Raquel, just looking at season by season, looking for those little improvements and increase in production. And you look at Manson, 28 games to when he first came up and debuted with the Ducks, had 3 assists. Then you look at 2015, 2016, 15 points in 71 games. Last year, 17 points in 82, and that huge jump this year now where he's got 32 points, 6 goals, which is a career high as well, and in 74 games. I don't think he continues to go upwards from that, at least point-wise, but if he's a guy that's going to sit around 25, 30 points for the style of game that he plays, he's going to be extremely valuable to this team, because I feel like he's the only type of defenseman that kind of has that certain edge to him in the Ducks lineup. You've got Lindholm, who's kind of a strong two-way guy. Fowler is and Montour are a little bit more offensive-minded. And then you've got Josh Manson, who maybe not necessarily is a full-on defensive defenseman, but he's the most physical out of all of them, and I feel like he just gives that blue line a little bit of edge and a little bit of nastiness.
No, I mean, that's true. It would be nice to see a couple of Ducks defensemen be able to sit around that 40-point mark. I mean, these guys are young. They have the ability to do so. If they can get that power play clicking, that's when you can start racking up the extra points there when you're away from 5-on-5. But I feel like they need that guy. They need a 40, 45-point defenseman here. I mean, they're all hovering around the same output. Was it mid-20-ish into mid-30-ish? If they can get to mid-40-ish in points, I feel like that would be solid.
Yeah, I feel like the only thing they're missing is that offensive defenseman. Montour, I feel like, is the closest guy to maybe becoming that in the future, where you're getting a 45, 50-point guy. But the Ducks don't have that Klingberg or that Erik Karlsson or that Brent Burns, and of course those are difficult players to get. You acquire them through the draft or get lucky in free agency or something like that. But that's really all they're missing on that blue line. And but if you can consistently get 4 guys getting 40, I mean, you don't really necessarily need that guy, really, right? I mean, if you got 4 guys producing at a decent level and contributing like they did in tonight's game, you don't need that one all-out offensive defenseman to build around if you've got 4 guys who can do that.
No, it's true. I mean, I would love to have them have that guy. Plus, I just want to have my cake and eat it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Matt kind of bringing up the Ritchie comment again in the chat. He said, what can they even get for Nick Ritchie? I feel like at this point, it can't be much, really.
We're being really hard on the guy, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
he played a little bit his first season, and then last season was kind of his breakthrough, which we thought he was going to build on. And then this season, he slumped quite a bit. He hasn't played all the games. He's had a little injury bug, right? A couple of games here and there. He didn't play. He's played 69 games.
Yeah.
What could you get for him?
I
maybe
honestly
a vet in a pick. If you're going to trade Ritchie in a pick, maybe get a pick back with a veteran player. You're not going to get anything that's going to blow your skirt up. I don't feel like
you got to find a GM who values the type of player he is as well. If you're going to get a bigger return for him, and I don't think you explore the avenue of just trading him outright for picks. I feel like if you're going to try and do something, kind of package him in a different deal. If the Ducks, for example, were to go after Pacioretty again in the offseason, which I don't think they do, but for example, if they were, maybe you package him in a deal like that, just tout him as a young prospect who might need a change of scenery, and you might get a little bit more than that, other than trading him to a team for like a 3rd-round pick or a 2nd-round pick, depending on what you can get.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think that's just the best route to go, yeah. I mean,
but it's tough to kind of pin down what exactly it is, what exactly it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's just, a lot of people still look at the fact he was drafted 10th overall and say maybe he just needs a change of scenery. We've seen that. Yakupov was traded from Edmonton to I believe it was Colorado at the time. No, St. Louis, I think, was where he got traded first. And everybody's like, "Well, watch out! This guy just needs a change of scenery." And he's going to start lighting it up. Of course, that wasn't the case. Now he's with Colorado and still hasn't done a lot. He was a former 1st overall pick. So there's always that assumption about a player who gets drafted doesn't work out, especially when they get drafted so high that maybe they just need a change of scenery. So I think maybe I'm using maybe a lot here, but maybe Bob Murray can kind of throw that at some GMs and say, hey, this guy can get in your team, and if he gets things going and it becomes the player that we thought he was going to be, he's going to really help you guys out.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, if he's going to try to make it work, he can't ever concede defeat on a 1st-round pick. He's going to get something for him.
Yeah. Continuing with, I think this is the last question we have in the chat from Dean. He said, seemed like the Ducks have been focusing more on shorthanded / overtime play. I wonder if this is a response to the penalties they've been taking. Would you agree?
They kind of have to.
Yeah.
That's a point of the game. I mean, they've left so many points on the table in overtime and shootouts that they kind of had to clean up that aspect of their game. The penalty kill's been pretty good. I believe they went 3 for 4 tonight. I think Edmonton only had 1 power play goal. The Ducks need to stay out of the box because, you got to think that McDavid's goal could have been a power play goal at that point. It was 1 second after it expired. So they let a team that is pretty down on themselves this season almost go 2 for 4 there. It's something they got to clean up for sure. I think they would be focusing on it, but now they have their full complement of players, so I think it's going to get better as it is. Just because we saw in overtime what a difference Ryan Getzlaf makes on this team.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I feel like it's kind of been something they've been doing all season. I mean, the penalty kill's 4th in the National Hockey League, so there's obviously a big focus on that and keeping that strong. And I feel like when not only is this team ill-disciplined at a lot of times, but they seem to get the wrong end of a lot of calls, and we've all seen the numbers and the disparity between the penalties given to the Ducks and the penalties taken. So I feel like they know it's going to happen, so it's something they work on to kind of stay above that, because as Dean points out, you really can't cut back on the penalties other than maybe curbing your discipline a bit, so you might as work on playing through it. And I feel like that's the kind of the avenue the Ducks have taken, is they know that they're going to be ill-disciplined at times. They know that they're going to get the wrong end of some penalties, so you might as well work to having a strong penalty kill so you can at least fight through it.
Let me get to the last question in our chat. It's from a buddy of mine, Chris Smith.
Yeah.
He says, with Tyler Soy's dominant season with Victoria and the dub, where does the former 2016